New York City, put your hands together and make some noise for Dave Smith.
My team is the team that thinks all politicians are criminals. What do you mean that's a man? That's a beautiful woman with a penis. Could you stop being such a it for like 5 seconds? Exit left. I want to suck your dick. Kanye West. Mein Kampf. Next year, you guys are going to be like, how come Dave's not doing another special this year?
Shut up and sit down.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You still have distrust there.
We all come from very different places.
Man, we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
We deserve better.
People have to have the information in front of them.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
There you go. Like, just promote people who are doing something. Volunteer to work with people who you like. And
take an issue that's important to you and do something.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only
Fight for Liberty.
This is the cherry on top.
Hello, fighters. Welcome back to Fight for Liberty Live on Free Speech Media. I'm your host, David Fite, here to get you fired up about men and women making the world a freer place. We've got the man Dave Smith back in the house tonight, coming in hot off of a new special, on his way to Skankfest in a couple of weeks. Super stoked for this conversation, but first, got to give a quick shout out and some love to our sponsors. First up, Blood of Tyrants Wine. If you are looking for a nice night in while sipping the blood of your enemies and taking down the tyrannical state, look no further than Blood of Tyrants Wine. A nice Merlot distributed by activists you know and love. Bloodoftyrants.wine is the place to go. You can use promo code FSM to get 10% off your first order. Again, that's bloodoftyrants.wine, or click the link in the description. Use promo code FSM to get 10% off and support the channel, support the network, and support Dan Berman and other awesome people involved in that project. Next up, we've got Crafton Business Services. Crafton is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs start, grow, and maintain their businesses by providing a wide variety of products and services to make your business more efficient, manageable, and profitable. Crafton understands how frustrating getting your business off the ground can be, and that's why they've put together their business-in-a-box solutions to turn your idea or side hustle into a fully functioning company in one place for one transparent cost. So for under $1,000, you get your corporate filing, your registered agent, a logo, business cards, marketing strategy, and an accounting consultation. All of that is just $9.99 plus state theft. And if you're looking for a little more than that, add a custom website, web hosting, more marketing material, more time with our marketing team, 5 times the bookkeeping services, and your first box of business cards for $24.99, again, plus state theft. And if you already have a business, Crafton can help you grow to new levels with targeted marketing campaigns, affiliate programs, website and social media redesigns, and more. To help make your business less of a headache, we can do streamlined accounting, tax prep, compliance, and all sorts of other things. Go on over to crafton.us to learn more. Again, use promo code FSM to help support the show and the network. Now, let's get to the actual show. We've got our guest tonight here. He is 1/3 of the Legion of Skanks, host of Part of the Problem, with a new comedy special out on YouTube and Gas Digital. The man, Dave Smith. Welcome back to the show.
What's up, brother? Good to be back with you, David.
It is a pleasure to have you back. So I'm not going to bore anybody with a testimonial question or asking you how you got into the movement or any of that kind of bullshit. I think everybody knows your story. So I'm just going to start off with the thing that's at the top of my list, and that's the special. You've already got over 250,000 views in under like 2 weeks. Tell me about it. How is it?
It's been good, man. The response has been really great so far, and so that's always fun. It's that's always what I wanted to do, was like to put out like great comedy specials. That's always been for so many years. That's been like the thing that I've envisioned in my mind. Like 16 years, I think now I've been doing stand up, and that's always what I wanted to do. And it was crazy. I wanted to do an hour. But Louis J. Gomez, who's another hilarious comedian, but he's also runs Gas Digital. He really wanted to put out these series of half-hour specials from the network. And Louis is like the guy, like he's one of my best friends in the world, and he's also like he's the guy who convinced me to start stand-up and convinced me to start podcasting, which worked out very well for me. And so, you know, I was kind of like, all right, man. If he was like really like, no, dude, this is what we got to do. All the analytics say people don't really watch hours anymore; they only watch half hours. So we got to do this. And then he was like, the company will pay for the production for it. And I was like, that part's really cool. So I just bought a house this year. You know, it's like I didn't really want to pay to produce it myself. So I was like, all right, that part's pretty great. So we ended up doing it this way. But I was I've told this story before, but I was in I mean, it's something like out of a fucking sitcom. But literally, I remember it was either the last week in February or the first week in March in 2020, and I was in Boston, headlining a comedy club, and I was there with Robbie Bernstein and my buddy Chris Vega. They were opening for me on the show, and I got off stage and I went back into the green room, and they were like, yo, dude, the hour is like really coming together. And I was like, yeah, guys, I got it. This is my new special. I was like, I need 2 months of just fine tuning a couple things, and I'm ready to film this bitch, and we're going to do it. And this is going to be my follow-up to Libertas, and I'm excited about it. And it's just sitting there like at the beginning of March 2020 going, all I need is 2 months of working this thing out. I mean, what's going to happen? Are they going to shut the world down? It's, you know, and like, and then like when March 2020 hits, I'm like, all right, well, it might be a couple months without being able to go on the road and do shows. So I'll just wait this thing out, and then we'll be ready to go. And then, you know, by the time the lockdowns went into like 3, 4, 5 months, and the COVID thing was so crazy, and it was like, now all of a sudden it wasn't just that I had to get back out on the road. It was like I had to like bury like half of it because it just didn't make sense anymore. Like, first off, now I had to have something to say about COVID. I can't be me and do a comedy special and not have something about this. So I had to work that out. And then there were a lot of like jokes I had that were just like about like Pete Buttigieg running for president that were like, yeah, well, that's can't really do that joke anymore. You know what I mean? And so then that got put off. Then I was planning on doing one in 2021. Then my wife got pregnant again. I should say, that's a weird way to put it. Me and my wife got she didn't just get pregnant with some random person. Like it was my baby. But then she got pregnant.
That's helpful.
I was like, just for the record, I'm the father, in case that wasn't clear the way I said it there. So my wife comes home, she's pregnant all of a sudden. And then I had all the health complications, as some of you guys may know about, with my son. And so then that was a whole thing where I couldn't really like travel the way, you know, like I couldn't really travel at all for a while there. And so then everything just kind of got put off. But then this year it was like, okay, this is the year to do it. And I'm going to follow up again next year. I'm going to put out another special. Like, this was only a half hour. I still got a whole lot more material like that's ready to go. So it was cool. It's been really cool to get it off finally, you know, after all of these last few wacky years, and I've gotten a great response to it. So it's been really rewarding.
That's awesome. How much different is it recording the special compared to just like doing a normal set? Is it a lot more pressure with the cameras on?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. It's a little bit like it's a different feeling. You know, you kind of like feel like when you record a comedy special, you kind of feel like this moment of like, this is like, it's kind of like part of your legacy as a comedian. Like, this is going to be the one, you know? And it's not exactly that, because what we did was, you know, we recorded 2 shows. That's typically how comics do it. Not always, but typically. It's like you record 2 shows of you running the same material, and then you can kind of like pick which one you want to go with. And then you can, you know, like there's like, it's mostly one show, the special, but then there's a couple jokes where it's like, oh no, that was actually from a different show than the first, you know what I mean? Than what most of the show is from. Cause I like the way I said it a little bit better, or I like the reaction a little bit better on that one. So it's like, it's yeah, there's definitely like a little bit different type of pressure. It's not just like an everyday show. It's like, no, this is the one. But I really like that. I like those moments. It's kind of to me why I always loved why I love doing debates. Because you kind of feel like I always get the feeling like whenever I do a debate, like I've done a lot of debates, you always kind of have the feeling of like, yo, I'm putting my career on the line right now. You know? Like I'm putting everything I have on the line. Like if I go and get fucking embarrassed in this debate, that is deadly for me. Like now it's all my people are going to look at me like, whoa, Dave was supposed to be the guy. And now he just got destroyed by this guy. But there's something kind of exciting about that. That's like fun. It's like, ooh, this is it. I'm putting everything, you know, it's like a gambling like thing. Like I'm putting all the chips in on this. And I kind of felt that way with the special too. Like I kind of enjoy something that just makes this like a big moment. Like you feel really alive when you do stuff like that. So I like that type of stuff. So that was fun. But yeah, it's definitely a different feeling than just any regular show.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there with the debates, because I feel like debates are kind of like boxing or MMA compared to like podcasting being like baseball, where it's like, you know, you're doing like 100 to 200 a year. It's just kind of like, you know, the average kind of thing. You're just kind of having a conversation, doing whatever, you know. But then where the debates, it's like every one of them is like, you know, you're currently undefeated. Are you going to continue to be undefeated? You're only doing like 2 or 3 a year. It's like such a big fucking deal. And yeah, that's why I prefer hosting them. It's not nearly as much pressure.
Yeah, but there's just something cool about that kind of feeling to me. You know, like I like having and I feel this weird thing where you know, like when I did a thing with the what are the classical liberal caucus guys, where I went on their show with I shouldn't be blanking on their names, but Eagle, what's his name?
And Jonathan Casey.
Josh, Eagle, and Jonathan. And so I went on their show, and we talked about it briefly up front, but that a couple people were like, "Oh, dude, why even like give them the attention? You're just putting more eyeballs on them." And it's like, yeah, but like if they wipe the floor with me, then I'm supposed to lose, you know what I mean? Then it's like, no, like it's almost like that's the correct thing if that happens, but like I'm confident they won't, so I think I'm right. Like I think I'm right about this, and in that case I certainly am right that we shouldn't be in a proxy war with Russia. But so it's just kind of like, you know, like I don't know, I feel like there's this weird thing where it's kind of like I feel like it's kind of noble to put it all on the line, but it's also kind of exciting and risky, and I like that. You know, I've always, you know, I chose a long time ago, I don't want to like work in a fucking cubicle. I want to do something like exciting that I love for a career, and so I enjoy that. I enjoy the excitement of those type of moments.
Yeah, I feel like if you don't like kind of stand up to, especially like the CLC specifically, it's kind of like Biden refusing to debate Marianne Williamson. It's like, does he have half a reason to do that? Iffy, kind of, sort of, yeah, saying like she's a nobody or whatever, but it just looks weak, and it is weak from his perspective. And yeah, if you're like, oh no, we won, now we don't have to debate anymore, that's not exactly a great standpoint, especially not in politics, where
I mean, I suppose it's always like a little bit of you know, like there's some nuance to it, and I'm sure there's some, you know, like if there was just some complete rando who had like, you know what I mean, like somebody with like 2 followers who's just like, I challenge you to debate on some ridiculous topic, you kind of be like, yeah, no, this is a waste of time. There's got to be like some level of like where it was, but you know, if it's like in that situation, I just went like, I don't know, like whatever the threshold is, I go, okay, I think they met it. And I feel like they're kind of almost this, you know, like there's this weird thing with the classical liberal caucus where there's something that I respect about them. And there's something where they're almost like they're the insurgency now, starting from like the very bottom. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I remember it's not that long ago that like I was the insurgency. You know what I mean? And so like I kind of I can respect something about them also where, you know, Michael Heiss had this he had a post like maybe like around a year ago or something like that, where he said to like the Mises Caucus haters, he goes, here's my challenge to you guys, rally around Amash, rally around Justin Amash, run Justin Amash for president, and let's see, you know what I mean, like let's all like bring energy into this and like have a competition about like which direction the party should go in. And at the time, I think maybe some people thought Justin Amash was going to run. I don't think he's going to now. No signs seem to indicate he's going to, but I don't know. But to some degree, there were like these other guys who just like kind of took their ball and went home and were like, well, we're just going to whine about things forever. And they were like, no, we're going to stay here and we're going to turn this thing into what we want it to be. And there's something about that I respect. Yeah. Like that I just go like, okay, I can get that. I can respect where you're coming from with that. Of course, my issues with them is that I just think they're like horrifically blue-pilled and like miss the mark on so many of the most important like issues. And I also, if I'm just being completely honest, I don't see them as a threat. I don't think they don't have any of the attributes that we had. Like they're not an insurgency in the way we were, where we kind of had these things where it's like, oh, well, we have all of these like guys with huge audiences. We have all of this to like draw off of. They don't really have like that. But at the same time, it's like we're here because we care about ideas and we care about, you know, what we believe is right. And I kind of got the vibe that that's true for them too. I just think they're wrong. But so it's like, okay, like that's enough. That's worthy of going like, okay, this is worth doing a thing. Yeah. And like I'd do another thing with those guys if they wanted to. Like I don't know, I just that to me feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I've been a critique of Heiss plenty of times publicly and privately, but like I was in a clubhouse room the other day, somebody was kind of giving him shit, and I was like, you cannot deny the fact that homeboy from almost nothing just called up Dave Smith, Tom Woods, the Mises Institute, and a bunch of people who he may or may not have gotten like a door slammed in his face or laughed off of the fucking planet, and made a thing happen that no one was really thinking about. And I don't know, that takes some balls, especially for like, you know, like not talking shit, you know, kind of like a shyer, autistic, more introverted type person like himself or myself and like plenty of the movement. That takes a lot of balls and a lot of determination. You guys fucking did it. And that's like, regardless of what anybody feels about the actual caucus itself, like that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I always think, you know, whoever, like I always have the attitude, and I mean with like enemies, like not like intra-libertarian party fighting. I mean like real enemies, like Barack Obama or Donald Trump, like the bad guys, you know? I always like look at them and go, hey, that's pretty impressive what they accomplished. What can I learn from that? You know, like what can I learn? You know, go listen to Barack Obama give a speech in his prime. You're like, yo, there's something you can learn from that. Like he's an incredible like orator. That's something. Or go listen to like Donald Trump and the way he tore through politics. There's something you can learn from that. You know what I mean? And so like it's kind of this weak thing where people try to like almost deny somebody like the objective accomplishment that they have, and instead of doing that, like live in reality. And even if you hate the Mises Caucus, at least acknowledge like, okay, well, look, Michael Heiss was just some dude, and he literally orchestrated a takeover of the third biggest political party in America. That is objectively impressive. You know, like even if you don't like him at all or don't agree with the direction the party's going in, like that is like, hey, he did something here. There's definitely something you could learn from that and take away from that, even if you disagree with the direction and think the party should go in a different direction. And, you know, we live in wild times right now. And so obviously there's going to be different people who feel like we should be playing a different role, you know, as this third party. But that doesn't mean that you can't like, I don't know. I would, I don't think there's any one of like the people who are successful who I don't agree with, who I wouldn't say, okay, there's definitely something there that I could try to learn from, that and make myself better.
Yeah, and I think like the biggest takeaway is, you know, what we've talked about of like the kind of the amassing the people that already have the audience. that's a takeaway that the party as a whole, the movement as a whole, can just widen the net now. We did the whole bringing the liberty movement into the Libertarian Party thing. Now bring the next rung of the tent in. The somebody can finally convince Michael Malice to join a political party. That would be an accomplishment. Just kidding. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But there's plenty of others out there. There's, especially like in the comedy world or the music world, there's a lot of that sentiment that's getting louder and louder now. You've got people like why do I always space on his name? Schneider, who's like posting Mises Institute links on a daily basis. Like, keep it going. Like, I think that's honestly my biggest gripe with the caucus is that they went, okay, we're gonna go this wide, bring all of these people in, and then they just stopped there. They created a line that was just like a little bit past like you and Tom Woods, and then they were just like, okay, that's it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this, that that Michael for sure is always like making attempts to bring it this next group. Here's this next group. Here's the metalcore scene, dude. They are fucking. There's a lot of liberty shit there. We got to bring those guys in. We got to bring these guys in. And like he's always like making attempts. I think like it's a challenge to get all of those different groups in. But I also just think that my biggest gripe with LP members, and I would talk about this a lot as I was kind of like traveling around doing a lot of like state conventions and stuff like that like a couple years ago, and it would always be like, listen, just make sure whatever you do, don't just camp out in this world and like not engage in the broader world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's almost like a natural tendency when you go off into this little club of people who all have these like libertarian views that like look, by the way, I'm not saying I didn't, obviously, right, like through 2020 and 2021 and 22 I had debates with other libertarians and I was involved in like the caucus wars and arguing with all of them, but at the same time that was always like the least of what I was doing. Like that was just like an occasional show here or there. What I was really doing every day, if you listen to my podcast every day, it was never about that. It was always about like whatever the crisis of the day in the country is and the bigger issues. And I was always trying to get on like bigger shows and talk about like these issues to their audiences. I'm never getting on like Tim Pool's show and going, all right, well, let me tell you why the pragmatists aren't as good as the radicals or like whatever. Like, cause that's not what it's about.
Right.
And you're like sitting in this moment where the whole, like there's this enormous realignment of everything happening politically in this entire country over the last 3 years. Like this is out of a movie, something no one could have predicted. And I mean, whatever, we don't have to go through all the things, but everyone knows what I'm talking about, how crazy things have been over the last few years. And there are some people in the Libertarian Party who have like parked themselves in this, what is the Libertarian Party, thing of the day. And that seems to be kind of all that they're doing.
Yeah.
And you're like, guys, like engage with the broader world here. Look, I don't know, like, do we really believe that what's going to happen is eventually the Libertarian Party is going to overtake the Democrats and the Republicans and win the presidency and the Congress and the appoint libertarians to the Supreme Court, and then we just, I don't know, but maybe what we can do is at least like plant a flag and impact the greater culture, and at least like like get our issues inserted into a national conversation, and at least like kind of move, with all of our might, move the needle a few ticks over toward more freedom. So that's only going to happen if we're willing to like engage with the broader world. And I do think that LP members tend to lose sight of that.
100% agreed. Honestly, I gave Heiss props. I'll give Sarwark props too. Just go completely out of the playbook today. He did an interview on Kennedy's podcast a little while ago, like from Fox Business Kennedy, and She was talking about like the LPI stuff that he's doing in Mississippi right now. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's working within the Democratic Party at the moment, working on like some state house races, doing some objectively kind of cool stuff like libertarian principled stuff. But she went on like a little bit of a rant about how awesome Spike Cohen is. And I know that there's beef there, right? Like there's some mad beef between Spike and Nick. And like she set him up to where he could have done just like a slight little underhanded dig and tried to move on or pivoted, but he didn't. He was like, yeah, Spike's doing great, and pivoted to the thing and continued the conversation. It was an entirely productive, like good conversation. It was only like a 16-minute episode or whatever, but it was just like completely solid. She set him up for like he could have been like, oh well, I don't know about that, but or something like that, and he didn't. And I was like, all right, that's better than you were 2 years ago. So
yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I didn't listen to that. I'm almost certain that Kennedy is completely unaware of that. So she was probably just, you know what I mean? Like Kennedy's just like almost going like, oh, you're a good libertarian. Here's another great libertarian, and has no idea. Kennedy's great, by the way. Like one of my favorite people in the world. That's great. That's great that he handled that way. You know, there's a lot of things where like, you know, sometimes there would be, let's say, and I don't mean this in like an insulting way. I'm sure if they're listening, it'll come off that way, but I don't know what to call them. But like the woke libertarians, or like some of the like more progressive libertarians who like hate my guts, you know, those whatever you want to call them. I don't mean that as like an offensive term. Just whatever, you know who I'm talking about, and I don't know how else to describe them. But like sometimes there'd be some of them who are like, after the Mises Caucus took over the party, they'd be like, well, that's it, I'm leaving, I'm joining the Democrats, you know, now or something. And I'd kind of be like, all right, well, go be the best Democrat then. Like even a woke libertarian is still the best Democrat.
Yeah. So
like go do that. Go be like the best guy there. Someone's got to be the best Democrat. So like, okay, that's fine. You know, like there's just a lot of things like that. Like sometimes like I think libertarians have a problem with that, where like there'll be someone like say Tucker Carlson or someone like that who will be like just nailing it on like he's like great on the war in Ukraine, great on the Federal Reserve, great on the CIA, great on Washington corruption, but then like really bad on China and really hawkish on Mexico. And it's almost like we have this impulse to be like, no, you got to be perfect on those two also. And you're like, yeah, but then he's a libertarian, you know, like then he's us.
Yeah.
Like, so someone's got to be the best right winger. And like, at least he's a right winger who's telling the right wing to be great on these 5 things, you know? And like, so, you know, you got to like take it for what it is. And so if someone could go do like good work within the Democratic Party, I'm not opposed to that. I think we got to have a battle on all fronts. I'm not, and I've always been this way. Which some people in the Libertarian Party don't like about me, but I've never been like a party loyalist. I'm not like, you know, I'm loyal to my principles. You know, I'm loyal to my family, I'm loyal to my friends, and I'm loyal to my principles. I think that's what's important. I don't think just like the party thing is important. And I've always said this, and I'd continue to say this, that like if Ron Paul is running as a Republican and Bob Barr is running as a Libertarian, I'm supporting Ron Paul. I don't care. I'm not going to go, well, I'm a member of the Libertarian Party. No, screw that. I'm supporting that guy. And so that, you know, like that, I think that's the attitude all of us should have.
Yeah.
You know,
that's what makes us different. That's what makes us, in a way, doomed to never actually really beat either of the other parties. In a way, but it's what makes us different and what makes us principled. And like, I mean, that's kind of how I feel about like Jared Polis in Colorado. I know the Colorado LP hates him, but I think that's has to do with the fact that he's the object of their anti-government hatred. Like nobody likes their personal governor, no matter where you live. But like, compared to, you know, like us in New York or California or Michigan or Texas or Florida or some other states that did some really crazy shit on either side of the spectrum, like he's doing some good stuff. He's like cutting back a lot of business regulation. He's trying to scale back a lot of taxes in the state. He's gone along with the state legislature on some gun stuff, but he's been pretty loud that like he doesn't agree with it per se, but it doesn't feel like it's his right to go against the will of the people or whatever, which is a wishy-washy take but I was okay with it from Tulsi Gabbard too. And like I caught a lot of heat for that too. Like,
I think that I get your point. I think the thing with Paulus that makes it a little bit different is that he started going at the Mises Caucus guys. So like he was actually tweeting at them, and then that is kind of like a different thing. Like what, like look, I mean, like I've praised politicians who I don't like at all when they get things right, even though they're really horrible on other issues. Like and again, this was a source of controversy within the Libertarian Party, but I give DeSantis a lot of credit for how he handled COVID in Florida. And I know he was bad for the first few weeks of it, but the fact that he turned around and like while New York and LA and all these other places were locked down, Florida was no longer, and they were, so I give him a lot of credit for that. By the way, he's been a horrific presidential candidate. Like, whoa, Jesus Christ, is it awful?
Could you have imagined knowing how terrible that was going to be like 6 months ago?
I'm
predicting that? Like,
I'm not that shocked because I always knew he was going to be a terrible presidential candidate. I always knew he would make a bad president. This is the guy who like goes to Israel to sign bills and stuff, and he had a terrible track record on foreign policy. Like he was a neocon on foreign policy in the House.
I could have never have imagined he would be as bad just objectively.
Yes, that point is well taken. But so even someone like me, right, like even when I was saying nice things, and I even went as far as saying I don't think the Libertarian Party should challenge him for governor. I think all of the governors who were decent on COVID are the ones we shouldn't target. We have limited resources, and I think we should be reasonable about who we try to go after here. But even that being said, as someone who had some nice things to say about DeSantis, if DeSantis ever started tweeting at the Mises Caucus that some like Mises quote and then going, you guys don't really understand libertarianism the way I do, you'd be like, what, motherfucker? What did you just say? Wait, you're gonna tell me I don't know libertarian literature? Like, dude, Paulus, let's sit down right now and see who can go chapter and verse. That's cute that you pulled out one Mises quote that you don't even understand what he was talking about, but like, really, motherfucker? So I think that's part of what happened with them, that it's a weird thing to have the governor of your state actually like try to put yourself in the position of having the governor of your state recognizing your caucus within the Libertarian Party and then going at them. Like, that's pretty wild, dude. So I think that was a big part of like what people were like, and I jumped in on that too, because like I can't let a governor talk shit to my caucus and not like jump in on that and be like, what'd you say, Mr. Lockdown Governor? You understand libertarianism better than we do? Like, I don't fucking think so. So that was part of it. But I will grant you that he is definitely like better than most Democratic governors. And so there is something to be said there for that. I know Justin Amash likes him too. I don't exactly know the deal with that, but I think they're friends or something.
Yeah, and I think that like the fact that he does know who Mises is and who the Mises Caucus is, in a way speaks to the fact that he's probably closer to being reachable than any other governor in the country. And like, since I'm not in the caucus, I didn't like that. He didn't attack me, right? So like,
right.
I didn't feel that I just kind of stayed out of that one. I jumped in a couple of like the way down in the threads when just like a couple of people were being stupid to each other, because like the unity instincts always kick in, and when I see two of my friends arguing, I try to like get into it, but yeah, I don't know. I think that I that's definitely justified in that one. Like I understand where the Mises Caucus guys were coming from. I just like obviously didn't feel the same. He didn't attack me, so I'm cool with him still.
I get that. I get that completely.
It would be kind of dope if Kathy Hochul was tweeting at me. I would be okay with that and going after her. Fuck yeah. So I want to talk about kind of, we were talking about COVID and the shift and everything that happened there. Kind of rewind a little bit and talk about the shift of podcasting from kind of these in person, in the gas digital studio, kind of doing this stuff face to face, to now, you've got your whole studio set up. Love the new background, by the way. It's solid.
Oh yeah, thank you. Oh man, I wish I could remember the name of the handle of the guy who made me. It's such a cool fucking like wood art piece that he made. This dude's so dope. I'll fucking send you. I'll find the link and send it to you, so you can fucking put it in like the notes or whatever. But yeah, he's a really great artist.
Fuck yeah. So how much different is it for you? Because like I started in 2020 just after the shift started doing this podcast. So almost everything that I've done has been like this. I've done like 4 or 5 in-persons. So like what's to you the difference? Do you miss the in-person? Do you like kind of the flexibility of just being able to sit down in a room in your house?
I love the flexibility of being able to do it from my house, but we are like we're starting up as of next month. Like Rob's going to be coming here and doing the podcast, and we're going to be doing it like in person again. In person to me is like so much better on so many different levels, and I don't exactly know what it is, but there's some just like human dynamic to it that like if you were just in this room with me right now and we were actually sitting down together, it'd just be better. Like it's just better. That being said, I do love, like I love, you know, particularly having 2 little kids. I love being able to like just literally, you know, just put my kids down to bed and then give my wife a kiss and then come down here and go, okay, I'm going to jump on with David. Like that's very nice to be able to do that. So it's a, you know, it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, I miss in many ways I just miss kind of the before times. Like I mean my life is very good. I'm not like complaining. In many ways my life is a lot better than it ever was before all of the COVID insanity. But I was thinking about this a lot lately just because we just went through another like another 9/11 anniversary, and I, you know, I was very close to 9/11 when it happened. I was only like maybe 2 miles away from the trade center, and I remember literally walking, like me and my friends got out of school and we forged a note. I forget who, one of the girls who had good handwriting, we like forged a note from our parents to get like me and my crew of friends out. And then we went, and I was on Flatbush Avenue, which is just like, it's like right up the road from the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan Bridge. And all the trains were out. And so we literally went out there and there were people walking, like dudes in suits covered from head to toe in soot, like just gray all over them, walking up and like, you know, watching. There was still, even at that point, it was like it was like hours after the towers went, where there were still like almost like the cloud, like the clouds of the towers there. And so, you know, 9/11 was like a big moment for me. I was 18, I think, when it happened. And but thinking about it, and you know, just it feels to me like we've just been in like an emergency state ever since then. Like ever since then, it's been like emergency government powers, emergency government reaction, emergency this, and that was all the way up through the financial crisis, through like everything after that. It was always emergency. Well, you know, quantitative easing is this emergency response and this emergency thing, and then COVID was like the ultimate, you know, just emergency powers. And just when I think about it, and even think about just the in studio stuff, I'm like, man, I kind of like long for a time before these phony emergencies. We could just be normal, you know? Yeah. So that I kind of miss. And I miss I miss like I miss New York City, what it was, not what it is now. But I miss kind of like I have this feeling of missing the before time. So there is definitely something to that. Although, granted, as I said, I mean, I'm not complaining. Like I'm very blessed and fortunate. I have a very good life. But it was, yeah, I do miss those times. I miss doing the show in the studio, for sure.
Yeah, I find it interesting that like there's a lot of podcasts that. You know, you've kind of been hybrid. You've done a couple of in the studio, and you know, you said you're gonna go back to more in person, and like Rogan went back to in person almost as quickly as you could make it happen. And then, you know, where Malice doesn't look like he's might ever do another in person episode again. And I feel like, you know, in 2018, if you were doing a podcast and you were like, you know, had somebody zooming in, that was like I might not even watch that episode because like it's gonna be a little bit broken up. It's gonna be whatever. Now that's the standard, and if you get to watch one that's in person, it's like, oh really? Cool. it's such a weird shift that just like the broken upness of this conversation is now just how everybody talks, because we did it for so long. We were doing it for work. We were doing it for news and literally everything.
Yeah, and I think in a way it kind of gave an advantage to like some of the smaller podcasts who didn't like have a studio or have something like that. They're like, oh, okay, well I could do a Zoom show, and now I'm kind of on the same level as what all these guys are doing. So there was a cool aspect to that. Rogan kept it doing in studio, but he also, you know, he had like the resources. I mean, Rogan had like a nurse who would come and give everyone COVID tests, you know, like the rapid tests and shit, back when it was really hard to get them, you know, like back when it was like a thing. So he like figured out a way to do it. So I get that, but there is something that is just there's something that's just better about the in-person ones. It's almost like it's the difference between like trying to meet somebody on a dating app or just like approaching somebody, you know what I mean? Like there's something just like more authentic about the old school way of doing it. Like it's like, just go talk to people, man. Like they're right there. Like just go say hi. I don't know, it's not that crazy. You don't have to just like swipe left or right on their appearance. There's something so kind of like a little corroding of the soul to do that, where it's like, I don't know, just like go up to someone and say, hey, how's your day going? And then like go from there.
It reminds me, I saw a post on Facebook the other day. It was like, men these days will literally stare at you from across the room at the bar all night and then go home and DM you, I saw you tonight.
Yo, that is wow, that is like a great comment on today's society. Man, there's so much about that stuff that fascinates me. Like I'm an old man now. Like I'm 40 and I'm married with kids and stuff. I'm out of the game and removed from the game, which is the correct thing. That's where you're supposed to be when you're a 40-year-old dad, you know? But that's just so wild to me. It's so hard. It's so alien from what it was like when I was younger. And there is something like, I remember I read this article. Shit, I cannot remember this girl's name, but there's some young girl who has written for Reason a bunch, and she wrote an article for the New York Times. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but she wrote an article about like hookup culture. And she's I want to guess she's like in her early 20s, I would guess. And I did a podcast on it where we went over the article, because it was just like, it was kind of fascinating to me in a way. But she was talking about the culture of like like continuous consent and that stuff, and how you know, like how her, like, you know, at college they would teach them all about rape culture and what consent really means and all of these things. And then she was talking about how like how all of her girlfriends are still like miserable in hookup culture, and that like they're just not happy or fulfilled by it. And her takeaway was kind of like, look, it's really great that we did all that continuous consent thing, but we need to go even further to make sure there's also meaningful relationships. And I remember just looking at it and like being like, yo, I really think you're not getting this, that the idea of having to like verbally say, do you consent to have sex with me? And not just saying that once, like what a mood killer that is, to not just like be picking up on, like, you know, like on nonverbal cues and picking up on a mood and picking up on like all these things, which is always what throughout history this has been. But then also to have to keep doing it the whole time, to have to keep checking in and being like, am I raping you now or am I not? Am I like, are we still having fun or am I a violent criminal? Am I still, may I touch your breast? May I touch your ass? Is so bizarre. And then to be like, okay, we did all these things, but you know what's so weird about this is that like women aren't happy. And you're like, that's not weird. Like, of course women aren't going to be happy with this. No woman wants that. Right. You know, like it's just this obvious thing that like no one will say, is that like no woman wants the guy who she doesn't want to grab her ass to just grab her ass.
Right.
But every woman wants the guy who she does want to grab her ass to just grab her ass.
Yeah.
That's the weird like dichotomy with these like relations. And it's just so bizarre that like I feel like no one, like what woman or what man wants to be the one who looks across the room, notices someone, and then goes and DMs them later that night? Like, who really wants that to be the story? Don't you want the story to be that you went over and talked to her? Like, maybe I'm just sounding like a grandpa right now, but like to me, it's like, isn't that so obvious that like, no, that's not what you want. What you'd want is to just have that real moment and go over. So, you know, I mean, I'm saying for the record, don't just grab her ass, but like go over to her and talk to her. Then like see if maybe she wants you to grab her ass.
Yeah, and like I'm gonna preface this just because I know that I'm sure there's at least a few hate viewers on this episode.
12 shots, baby. Let's go.
I'm gonna preface this is not like a victim blaming in any way, shape, or form, but like the problem that I've noticed is that the cultural pendulum is swinging back the other way, and like the rape kink mentality is becoming way more popular. It's like there's a growing number of women out there that like want not just for you to grab their ass like a normal person, but like for you to grab their ass even after they say no. Like legitimately want that and are posting about that. There's some fucked up people follow me on Twitter, man. Like, and it's just something that I've seen getting more and more popular, and obviously it's like something that people are posting on, like, you know, private anonymous like Twitters or Tumblr, whatever the fuck they're on, but and you know, kind of shamed about it, and like, you know, keep it under wraps. No one's out here like shouting that this is a good thing per se, but it's something that like, especially in the like older Gen Zers who are now becoming, you know, like graduating college, becoming more active in that, and it's just like fucked up that
that's interesting.
The need to go that extra step now, because I feel like as a counterbalance to the problem that you're talking about, where so many men are just like incapable of making the first move because they're terrified.
Well, there's something really interesting about that, right? Like it's gonna, so like I'm not aware of that. I don't have my finger to the pulse as much as you in this regard, but there is something kind of like Freudian, right? Like if you repress something, then it reemerges in a more destructive way, right? Like there's something about that, and there is something interesting about if you think about kind of the general theme, like, you know, to like a lot of like the kind of like progressive. You know, like in many progressive people's minds, they'd go, hey, back in the 50s or whatever, women were oppressed and subjugated, and they were basically like the husband was the boss and they were subservient to them. And now we're fighting for all this liberation, you know? And then what you end up seeing, say, in like porn is like, you know what I mean? Like women literally being like face fucked and then spitting in their face and then coming on their face. Like it's like, holy shit, this is like literally the most degrading thing you could imagine, that any of these women back in the 50s would have been like, whoa, that's a woman being degraded, you know what I mean? And like, and then that same woman who's doing that will be like, yeah, but I'm not like these chicks were when they were being degraded. And there's something very bizarre about all of that. Like it's like, whoa, what's really going on here? And like that to me, all of that stuff seems to be like an unhealthy manifestation of this. But there certainly is like, there is undeniably like a desire that many women have to be dominated in some way. And what exactly the healthy version of that is, I you know, like I think that depends on who the person is, but it does seem like it's a bizarre thing where the more we suppress this kind of like this dynamic, the more it, you know, in a very Freudian sense, reemerges, I think, in a even more unhealthy version.
And I think this is one of the areas where libertarian philosophy, not policy, not politics at all, but just like the actual core philosophy of live and let live comes into play. Because the thing is, like, not all women have that desire that you're talking about.
Sure.
Most, but not all. And there seems to be this just incapability for society to say most relationships can look like, say, I'm sure probably yours. I'm sure you probably wear the pants in your marriage, right? Like, most can look like just a nice, healthy marriage. But then also there's going to be some where she wears the pants, and that's okay. And that's just like, that's fine. There's like an 80-20 split, and that's just how it works. Society's just like fucking capable of accepting that. And then, the other like 10-15% that are never going to get married, and they're super happy with that. They're going to live long, fulfilling lives completely single, like the Apostle Paul type shit. Like, that exists too. And somehow, especially the group that grew up reading about the Apostle Paul can't be like, oh yeah, that's cool. If like homegirl wants to just like be single, like, and I think, it's like the squeakiest wheel gets the grease type mentality created that, like, the massive swing that you're talking about, where like the 20% of women who didn't want what they had in the 50s because it was oppressive to the women who aren't naturally geared for that, made it to where nobody gets that.
Right. No, I think that's right. And I think it's always like overcorrections, Like if there's a problem in one area, then there's a complete overcorrection that takes it so much to the other area. It's like if the woke feminist shit is like getting like too big, then there's like the Andrew Tate response where it's like, well, the answer is to fucking be a pimp and have these bitches on webcams and shit. And you're like, yeah, I mean, no, it's not at all actually the correct answer to this. And I think you're right. I think that there's always going to be there's always a percentage of society who won't fit into kind of like norms, and they live abnormal. And I don't mean that in any sense derogatory. Like, I live an abnormal life. It's just I mean just literally that by the definition, not the norm, And so there's always going to be that percentage of people. I think what we've slid way too much into is like demonizing the norm, and we're now kind of like demonizing the thing that for most people is going to be the best, most fulfilling option for them. And that, I think, is not a good way to live. I don't think we should demonize minorities either. I don't think that's the correct answer. I don't actually I don't think like that. I don't think that's helpful for anyone. Yeah. But I do think that like if we're going to choose to celebrate like families that stay together and have kids, or we're going to choose to celebrate single moms, I think we're better off choosing to celebrate families that stick together and have kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we're better off kind of like promoting the norm and then being tolerant of people who deviate from that. But instead, it seems like the only like conversation is between like demonizing everyone who deviates from the norm or deviating the norm. Or demonizing the norm, rather, I should say. And so, like, that's just like, this is all stupid, man. Like, neither of those are the option. No, neither of those are the answer. Mm-hmm. And it's the whole mashup of that is very bizarre. It's very bizarre to see, like, I say it's the woke feminist thing is very strange. And then the like manosphere type like response to that is also very strange. It's like none of you guys are getting this right. And it seems like everybody's kind of LARPing to some degree. Like, I don't really think any of you guys are actually this. It's like all the, like,
except for Andrew Tate. I believe every fucking word he says.
Oh. Oh, no, I mean, I think he's being his real self. Oh, yeah. Although I think he is kind of downplaying some of the shit he did. But but there are like these chicks now who will come out and their whole thing is being like, women should only be housewives and they should never women should never talk. We shouldn't even be allowed to vote and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, all right. If you believe that, cool. Shut the fuck up then and go away. What the fuck are you doing talking about politics, woman? Like, get in the kitchen. What are you doing here? What the fuck are you doing being an influencer? Okay. Like, if you really believe that, well, if you really believe that, then like, okay, go be a traditional woman or whatever you're saying. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of bizarre that you're even in this position then. This is a pretty masculine role that you're in here. telling everybody about what should happen and shouldn't happen. So what are you even doing here then? So it's all kind of like bizarre, and a lot of these things, like, I don't really believe it. I don't really believe all of these people. I don't really think any of these people here are being genuine.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to see how much of it, like, a cultural force this movement has been.
Yeah. I feel the same way about the, like, you know, basement dwelling virgins that talk the male side of that same thing. It's like, oh, you should get married and have kids. It's like,
yeah,
okay, go. The women aren't in your basement, or at least I fucking hope not.
They might be. That's the problem.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of that. It's very easy and look, there's like, we all know this, right? Like, there's a lot of like people on Twitter who, and I like, or on social media in general, and I mean, I try my best to like not be this, although I'm sure I'm a little bit guilty of it too, and everyone is. But there's a thing where, like, you know, like, you'll see like guys, and I mean, this is true, like very kind of low status guys who will like kind of talk shit, but like fighting words, like really crossing the line of talking shit to other guys on Twitter. I mean, you'll see this with UFC fighters. Like, a UFC fighter will lose, and he'll be like, well, you know, it didn't work out my way tonight, but I'll be back in the ring in a few months, and blah, blah, blah. And there'll be guys on Twitter who are going, yeah, you're a fucking bitch, and blah, 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 all this shit. And you're like, yo, dude, you would never in a million years be able to, you know, like, you would never say this to this guy's face. But you're the guy who's never called another guy a bitch to his face in your life, but you're getting a thrill out of doing it when there's no risk involved, you know, like, you can just do it from the safety of being in your underwear at home and do it. And like, so there's this weird dynamic where people kind of like, they get to play a character online and do things that they would never do in real life. And so there's a lot of that on all sides, and this is true in politics and all this shit. And there's something about that that's not healthy. Because you're kind of almost like you're building up this persona that you're not living it. And that's not good. That's not good for the soul.
Yeah. I think the like Clubhouse and then Twitter Spaces amplified that shit heavy too, because you get quadruple the endorphin rush of actually calling somebody a bitch out loud. Like, where they're listening, like on a phone call type thing, because especially most of the time, if you're on a phone call with somebody, that's still somebody that you might run into, where this is kind of the first time where you can basically just be on a phone call with whoever the fuck and talk that kind of shit. And like, I still hang out on Clubhouse every once in a while, and I'll go into some rooms where they're just going way above and beyond even some of the shit that I see on Twitter sometimes, and it's like, these guys think that they're so fucking, and I mean, in all reality, a lot of them are, you know, people who have gotten, like, a lot of them, or at least they claim, you know, most of them are like vets and you know, fighters and you know, train and all of this other stuff supposedly, but they will just talk some of the absolute wildest shit to each other, and I'm like, you guys live on different continents. Just stop. He's in Australia. Like, just stop talking.
Yeah. Well, I've yeah, I don't know about that, but I've experienced definitely a lot of like people like just like saying things where you're almost kind of like, okay, listen, man, like, what are we doing here? Like, why are you're even taking it to this level? Like, what are you trying to do? Yeah. Trying to fist fight or something like that? Like, we're both 40.
Right.
What are you talking about? Like, it's just very bizarre. The internet, you know, there's a lot of great things about the internet, but one of the weird things about it is that it removes a lot of, you know how like if you eat fruit, that's really good for you, but if you drink fruit juice, that's not good for you, because like you don't have the fiber with the sugar.
Yeah.
So like if your body's just getting the sugar without the fiber, it doesn't process it the same way. And it's kind of like that. It's like we're having the communication, but like we don't have the fiber here. Like we don't have like the element of us both talking to each other in face to face, where it's just like, oh, you probably wouldn't cross this line because, you know, like, yeah, we'd probably fist fight if you said that to me face to face. So you wouldn't do that. But anyway, it's just a weird dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, I you know exactly what I'm talking about. People acting wild on a Twitter space.
Oh yeah,
That one was
I've
beautiful.
had some experience with that. But I had to say that. I had to literally say that thing. I go, listen, man, come on. You wouldn't talk to me this way if we were just talking. So let's not do this now.
You're wrong. I watched him do it face to face at Porkfest.
With who?
There was a dude going on an anti-vaxxer rant. That basically the subject of his rant was the vaccines gave my daughter autism, then the COVID vaccine killed her, so we should all join the Democratic Party and vote for RFK Jr. so that it's RFK Jr. versus Trump, and that way we know somebody good will get elected. That was his rant. And Kaufman was just like, you're a fucking idiot. And this dude like actually had to get physically removed from the stage because he was about to jump over the table and fist fight Jeremy Kaufman.
Jesus Christ.
So I think he might have actually said that shit to your face. I don't know. Depends on how much he's
I may have had to be removed. I don't know.
But back to the subjugation of women and stuff. You've got Skankfest coming up here, September 29th, October 1st. Which is more fun, Skankfest or all the LP state conventions combined?
Oh, Skankfest. I mean, I love LP conventions, and they're fun in their own way. But dude, Skankfest, for anyone who's been there, Skankfest is a fucking party, dude. Like it's incredible. It's the best comedy festival in the world. I challenge you to find anyone who's performed there or anyone who's gone to it who would not agree with me. Like I'm not sure. I don't think you could find anyone who's ever performed there or ever gone to it who wouldn't agree that's the best comedy festival in the world. It's just like a 3.5 day party with like some of the best comedians in the world. It's an unbelievable environment where, you know, for all the like the people who don't like us or whatever, like whatever they might say about us, it's like a love fest. Everyone loves each other. The fans love all of the comedians. The comedians love all of the fans. It's just like an unbelievable, like positive energy. I mean, it's a little wild, you know, like people are doing wild shit, but you know, even if you're not, like, I don't really do wild shit these days anymore. I'm not like a big like drug guy or party guy, but it's just so amazing. The shows are great. It's also cool for me because like we like you know, like I like when I started out in stand-up comedy, there'd be like this whole crew that we were all together all the time. Like we just every single night we all did stand-up comedy together. Every night we all hung out together. And like my best friends in the world were like it was like me and Lewis and Jay and Nate Bargatze and Mike Vecchione and like Kurt Metzger and like all these guys and like Mark Norman and Sam Morrell and all these guys. We were all just like friends, and we just always were doing shows together. But now we've all kind of grown and we do our own things. So what happens is at Skankfest, it's like all of us together again, and like that's really cool. So it's just like hanging out with all my great friends from like years past who like, you know, we just don't hang out like that anymore because we all have our own shit going on. And so that's great. I always just have the best time there, man. I'm really, really excited as it's getting like closer to it. I'm just getting really, really hyped for it. If you ever get a chance, anyone listening, if you ever get a chance to come to Skankfest, if you're a fan of stand-up comedy, you're gonna love it. It's the best comedy festival that's ever been made.
Fuck yeah. You mentioned Mark Norman. I'm just gonna say he is very quickly becoming my favorite comedian. Like I keep watching his shit. He's fucking fantastic.
Mark's an incredible comedic talent. Yeah.
And I watched the Legion of Skanks episode like I think a week and a half ago that you were in Austin, and he just like showed up randomly uninvited and just sat down, pulled up a chair. I was like,
oh yeah,
what?
I didn't see that episode. So you've seen an episode I haven't. Yeah. I was out promoting the special and doing Rogan's podcasting club. But yeah, I didn't see that. I didn't even know Norman popped into that one. That's cool.
Yeah, I think he didn't show up much after Michael Che, because Michael Che showed up super fucking late. But I actually at Porkfest, I bumped into this couple like on day 2. I don't even remember what we were doing, where we were at, but we just like started hanging out, started talking, started smoking weed together, and then spent a solid half of the rest of the festival together as like the 3 or kind of like 5 of us. There was like another group of people that were just kind of like there the whole time. They found the Libertarian Party because they went to Skankfest and have gone to Skankfest for years and love you, love Robbie, love everybody there. Follow Gas Digital, followed your guys' joining of the Mises Caucus into the Libertarian Party, and, you know, like showed up to LP Michigan Convention 2021, 2022, you know, and then went to the national, or I don't think they went to Reno, but they were still, you know, kind of helped the takeover wing, and, you know, not super like diehard caucus war of any kind, but just like, these are our people. These are the people that brought us into the movement. So obviously we're gonna do what Dave says, because fuck yeah. But literally, like, yeah, they got introduced to libertarian philosophy through Skankfest. So that's pretty.
Well, I'll tell you,
dope.
it's so bizarre, right? So there's a whole bunch of people who I've met over the years who found Legion of Skanks from part of the problem. Like, who were like, oh, I came in, or like, you know, however they came in, oh, I found you on Rogan, and then I loved your political shit, and then I listened to Part of the Problem, and then I was like, oh, this guy's on a comedy podcast too, let me check that out. And then we fell in love with the comedy podcast. And then there's a ton of people who come over the opposite way, like, oh, we loved Legion of Skanks, and we thought it was so funny, and then we were like, Dave does this political podcast too? All right, let's give it a shot. And then listen to that, and then we're like, oh, he's actually making a lot of sense. And so there's like this door both ways, which is very bizarre to me. But what's so funny too is that there's so many people who go, oh, I came in from Legion of Skanks. I loved the story about like whatever, you know, like Lewis banging, you know, like 3 chicks, or like, you know, him sticking a gun up Jay's butt or something like that. And then we were like, oh, Dave's great. He has a political podcast. Let's go check that out. And then that's how they came into this libertarian world, where I am called a fucking right-wing fascist or something like that. You're like, well, dude, I just brought these people in on this threesome story into libertarianism. So like, I don't know if it's completely fits that world, but weirdly, there is a lot of crossover in both of those directions. And there is a certain like angle where they all kind of do fit together, that I, you know, like believing in liberty, and I believe in like, and I'm kind of against like woke PC culture, and I'm for like comedians just like being comedians and having free speech to say what they want to say, and that all kind of does tie in together in some weird way. So there's something where I think the type of person, not always, but the type of person who's into my thing on one side is probably going to be into my thing on the other side. Obviously there's exceptions to that, but that's been very interesting for me to see over the years, like the people, like which way they came in, and the ones who like both and stuff like that. And, you know, you'll see at Skankfest, there'll be people who are literally like, you know, it's like a range from like people who are like, hey, dude, like I was a meth head for years, and listening to Legion of Skanks was like, while I was getting clean, was really helpful. It's great to be here at Skankfest. And then there'll be like someone else there who's like, I was reading Ludwig von Mises, and then I heard about Skankfest. And like, it's just, it's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like part of my goal here tonight is to push people through that door from the politics into the comedy side, because like so many people in the LP could use a little bit more comedy in their life. And like
a lot of people in the
more of that
a lot of people in the LP could use a little bit more a little bit more of a release in their life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think comedy could be one of those. Yeah.
And I mean, we talked about this the last time you were on, like 2 years ago, about how comedy has always kind of been that libertarian vibe since its kind of origins in the 30s and 40s. And it's always been a viable method to reach people that I think the liberty movement in the like organized version, you know, has just completely ignored for the most part. Like, I think George Carlin has done more for liberty than most libertarian politicians. there's probably a few exceptions that I would put above him, but he's up there on the list of like waking people up and shoving the red pill down people's throats.
Oh
and
yeah,
like,
100%. Yeah, yeah.
And like he would have never have joined the LP per se, but like if the LP in that day had actually like tried, maybe. Like and like really like kind of attached, had him perform at the national convention in like 88 when Ron Paul was running for president or something like that. Could you imagine those two on a stage together? Like, and we can do that kind of shit now, and we're starting to a little bit. Like there's plenty of people like yourself who are doing a lot more of that, and I think the movement is finally starting to give them the recognition that they should. But we can do a lot more. I want to do a lot more.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Completely agree.
So whose idea was it to do like a whole festival behind like Skankfest and everything?
It was Lewis. It was everything was always Lewis's idea. It was his idea. And there was, you know what happened was there was this like woke comedy festival. It was like right when the podcast, when Legion of Skanks was starting to take off a little bit. And there was this like some woke comedy fest. I can't remember what they called themselves, but they were doing this thing where like a few comedians started this comedy festival. And when they say comedy festival, it's like no thing. Like they rented one little venue and they were like, hey, we're having a comedy festival here. And they did this thing where they were promoting it as like a woke thing. And what they said was if you were a comedian and you wanted to submit to it, it was, I don't remember the exact price point, but it was something like there was a submission fee of like $100 if you were a straight white man. But if you were a woman, you only had to pay $77 because women only make 77 cents of the dollar or whatever. So you get cheaper. And if you were a black guy, you only had to pay whatever. And if you were like whatever, if you were gay, you only had to pay whatever. So like it was like tiered on like who was most oppressed and who was, and we were all like, yo, what? You're just charging comedians to submit to your festival. You're not doing anything for social justice. You're just making money off these like broke comedians. You know what I mean? It's like you get like 500 submissions and then you make a ton of money and then you like pass a few of them on and do some bullshit show. And then Lewis was just like one day, I think it was on the podcast. He just goes, you know what? We're going to do our own festival and we're not going to charge anyone anything to submit because that's bullshit to charge comics money. So we're going to sell tickets and then we'll pay all the comics. How about that? And we're more woke than you. So that like kind of that was almost like how it started. And then we just did one and it was just at the Creek in the Cave. The first Skankfest ever was at the Creek in the Cave, which was where this comedy club where we used to do the show. And it had like it had a few rooms. Like there was a big showroom upstairs and then like a little showroom downstairs and then there was a big backyard area. And we were like, we'll just do that and do podcasts and stand-up shows and all that. And we sold like maybe 300 tickets or something like that. So it was like that little comedy club was packed. And it was just so cool. It was like the coolest thing. It was like, oh yeah, look, all these people came out, man. This is pretty incredible. We were all just drinking together and partying and having fun. And it was just like a good time. And then like every year, it just kind of got like bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So every year has been the biggest Skankfest. And this year is going to be like by far the biggest one. So now it's like a thing where like thousands and thousands of people are coming. And it's like, and we're doing it in Vegas again this year, which I'm excited about. But that was it. That was kind of the life of it, was just kind of like this Lewis idea. And then we all kind of were like, yeah, that is a good idea, and got behind it, just like everything else. And then it just kept growing.
Yeah, the like entrepreneur / like sticking to the bit comic lover in me kind of appreciates the woke comedy thing, the like right, charging the different things, just being like out in the open about it like that and just like doing the thing. The part of me is like, that's fucking great. Like that's kind of funny.
Well, my thing is it was like, look, fine, rip off young comics, but don't like tell me how noble you are while you're ripping off young comics. But I guess to your point, there is something you go like, that is pretty ballsy. That is pretty like, you're really going for it. No, good for you.
Yeah. And like again, like kind of like the Polis thing. Like I guess I didn't. As you were telling that story, my head didn't go, you're ripping off young comics. My head went, you're doing something funny, because I've never been a young comic trying to like do stuff like that. And who would have fallen for something like that? So like my brain didn't go there at first, but But yeah, I don't know. I do appreciate when progressives just like say the quiet part out loud and stick to it. It's a fun thing.
I get that. Yes.
Who are you most excited to see at Skankfest?
Ooh. That's a tough one, man. I'm you know, like I don't think he's coming this year. Nate Bargatze came last year. I don't know if he's coming back this year, but that was who I was most excited to see, and who is to me like one of the greatest comedians in the world. But just on a friendship level, that's who I'm. You know what I mean? Just because like I love that guy. He's like a brother to me. So that's who I was excited to see last year. I don't know. I'd have to like look up and down the lineup. You know, like I don't know. It's more what I'm excited about seeing is not just like as a comedian necessarily, is just who I'm like, oh shit, I haven't fucking hung with that guy in forever, so it'll be great to see him. But as a comedian, I'll say last year, just watching Dave Attell perform, I like, to me, I think Dave Attell's like the greatest comedian in the world, and he's just I remember just sitting there watching him last year at Skankfest, where it was just like, god damn, that was so much fun to just sit and watch a Dave Attell set. You know, like on a show like that, actually which I don't like get the chance to do anymore, but I used to a bunch. But to be like, Dave Attell's on, I'm not on for another 30 minutes or something like that. I'm just gonna sit here and watch his set and just watch it and be like, yo, this is incredible. But I don't know. I'm like, I don't know if there's one person I think of. I don't even know exactly everyone who's coming. I was looking at the lineup the other day, but I don't even remember. It's not even like one specific person. It's more just kind of like the hang is what I'm excited for.
Fair enough. Do you watch comedy a lot if you're not performing that night? Do you go out and watch other people?
No, not anymore. I used to a ton, but like, you know, it used to be a different thing. I used to be going into New York City and just doing sets every night, where you do these like what they call showcase shows in New York City, where it's like everyone's doing like a 15-minute set, you know what I mean? And there's like a whole bunch of comics on the show. But now I'm just kind of going out on the road and doing headlining shows. So like I watch Rob Bernstein a bunch and see like the new thing he's developing or the new thing he's coming on, and I enjoy watching him. But I'm not really like watching that much comedy. I might watch like the guy who's hosting for me and Rob one weekend, but I'm not like really watching. And then I try, so I'll watch my friends when they put out a special or something like that. I'll watch that. But I try not to watch too much stand-up, because you kind of don't want to you get to a point you don't really want to watch too much. You don't want to be influenced by any of that. When you're young and new in comedy, you want to watch all of it to kind of figure out what everyone's doing. But then at a certain point, you're kind of like, I want to come up with this on my own, and not not let anything else seep into my mind. So not too much.
At least
but it's
plausible
Skankfest
deniability from plagiarism kind of thing.
You just don't even want it to seep into your head, because it's not just plagiarism. It's like a thing where maybe even if you just say something the way someone else would say it, you don't even want that, But at Skankfest, I'll watch a bunch of people if I get the chance to.
Fuck yeah. That's another way that I think podcasting is it's a little bit easier, because I can definitely, I'm also still in that young and growing phase that you mentioned, where I do a lot of watching other people's, and I watch a lot of older late night hosts like Craig Ferguson and some of the classics, as far as just trying to pick up mannerisms and stuff like that, and how they handled conversations, how they introduce guests, that kind of stuff. Obviously, again, to the weirdness of the Zoom, I can't introduce a guest like a late night show host. There's just not that much energy in a Zoom call. But
yeah, I know what you mean.
But I think maybe it's because the conversation's a little bit longer. You don't notice as much if somebody's kind of picking up on other people and kind of picking up conversations where other people were having them. But fuck, I had one more question about Skankfest, and I didn't actually. I was gonna bring it full circle, because one of the other things that I really appreciated about the Mises Caucus was that, similar to Gomez and the original Skankfest, they were just kind of we're gonna do some fucking events, we're gonna just do some things, and most state parties spend their entire year fundraising and planning for that year's state convention. They spend all of their money. They make most of their money back on ticket sales and donations at the convention and then repeat next year. And that's like the big fucking thing. And then Michael was like, yeah, we can do like half of that in 40 or 30 something states in like ourselves also. And it's just like, you know, just do that. And made it work, and, you know, had people like you and Scott and Tom Woods and like so many other people that like would never have shown up to a state convention 3-4 years ago, showing up, getting speeches, and I went to multiple like Mises auxiliary events that were bigger than the actual state conventions that they were like a spin-off from, and it's just great, like that kind of stuff. I feel like instead of it being kind of like that, it should be there's just like more, you know, just more events in general, you know, since fuck the caucus war, that's kind of over now-ish. And now it's like, you know, we can have the state convention and then 2, 3, 4 other events throughout the year where it's just like a comedian and a musician and a couple of politicians getting out in front of 1,000 people and doing something cool.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, that was always to me the moment that the Mises caucus won the caucus wars was, and I know you were there, was in Pittsburgh. It wasn't in Reno. It was in Pittsburgh. That's when it was over, and everyone kind of knew. Like everyone paying attention to it kind of just knew what it was. And it was this event, if people don't know, it was a few years ago now, where I forget exactly how it went down, but the Mises caucus asked the Pennsylvania party for me to be a speaker, like at the thing. And I said I'd come out and speak for free, by the way. I said I'd come out and speak at the convention and like bring all of my people to the convention. And they were like, no, he's too problematic. And then when they said that, I think Tom, I might be misremembering this, but I think Tom Woods was already a speaker there. And then he was like, well, I'm not going to speak if Dave isn't allowed to speak.
How are
and
you
then
more problematic than Tom?
Yeah, well, you know, I think at the time that wasn't even like a question. I think I was a way more problematic one, but Tom's not problematic either. But no, or maybe it was Scott Horton. I don't remember exactly what it was, but then it was kind of like, oh, so then it like a bunch of people just weren't gonna like speak if they wouldn't let me. And then we just decided to have our own counter event. And it's not just that the counter event had way more people at it. It was like the energy in it was just like insane. Like it was something like 350 people in like a room over, like, and it was insane. And there were a whole bunch of speeches there. And then the next day they kind of like invoked this never before invoked bylaw to not let like half of the new people vote. And so the Mises caucus didn't win the party that year, but it was almost like, oh, but the writing's on the wall that there's no way, like this is so clearly like what's gonna happen in the future. And so those counter events kind of, you know, it to some degree, the old guard, by trying to like deny us, put more energy into us when we were having these other events. But then to some degree you're kind of like, look, like you should have just fucking let us all be a part of the event, man. Like it didn't have to be this way. None of it had to be this way. Like it's you know, sometimes like we were talking about before, like the classical liberal caucus guys, they'll be like you know, they'll be like, well, look, the Mises caucus is terrible because look at the, you know, membership is down or something like that, like since, you know, Reno, and like, oh, you know, it is, but which is bad. And the buck should stop with the people in charge. And like, I'm fine to take, maybe I should take some responsibility for that. Whoever's in charge, take some responsibility for that. But they're also like, kind of like I was saying earlier, like it's totally like missing the forest for the trees, because they'll make all of these numbers and graphs and they're like, look, a membership was here and then it went down here and then like whatever. And you're like, wait, hold on. What are the raw numbers? Give me the raw numbers. And like, I don't know exactly what they are, but they're like, we're down from 16,000 to 13,000. And you're like, wait. That's what we have? Dues paying members in the nation? That's what we have? Like, yo, this is pathetically low, and it was pathetically low at your starting point, and it's pathetically low now. None of this isn't proving anything about like which caucus sucks. This is proving that we all suck. We've all been doing a terrible job at this. There's not like spin it however you want to, but that's the takeaway from all of this. And the truth is that like we should all look at this and be like, whoa, we should be doing a lot better. And the reality is that if the Mises Caucus had lost, let's say instead of winning every position that we were gunning for at Reno, we lost every position we were gunning for at Reno, what do you think membership would look like? I think a whole lot of people would have left. You know, I think a whole lot of people, I think it's still, I think we almost like reached a crescendo where no matter who won, there was going to be some people who left over it.
Yeah.
And so maybe the moral of all of that is that like it never had to be a war. Like it could have been a healthy competition, but it didn't have to be like a war. And to me, from my perspective, and I'll fully admit I'm limited by my perspective on this, but I feel like the war was declared on us, not the other way around. Like I feel like the war, when you had all of the people who were in charge of the party saying that Ron Paul and Lou Rockwell and Tom Woods and me and Michael Heiss and all these people are bigots. They are alt-right Nazis. When you had that was like a declaration of war. Yeah. And then it was like, okay, we're fighting a war now. But it never really had to be a war. I was never at war. I never had a fucking I never had a problem with Joe Bishop Henchman. I don't fucking know anything about the guy. My only issue was he tried to steal a state affiliate and then lied about it and then resigned in disgrace after deleting all his emails and then called us all a bunch of bigots. Like, whoa, what? Like, what the fuck is that, dude? You just got caught and now your response is to call us all racists? Like, and fuck you, I'm not a racist. Like, this is insane. And so it was always that type of thing with me. Like, I never would have known who Nick Sarwark was. I didn't care. It was all just like him coming at the people I like. So anyway, that's old shit. Who cares? But I'm just saying, like, maybe the moral of this whole story is that we should have just been doing events together this whole time. We should have just been having like a healthy competition for what, you know, your vision for how the party should go is, rather than trying to like, you know, destroy the other side. Because once you got into destroying the other side, it's like, okay, we had a who can destroy the other side battle, and we won. We won this battle. But if you're one body and you're trying to destroy the other side, then yeah, the body is going to be weaker after that happens. Yeah. But it would have been weaker if our side was destroyed too. It all would have been dead, you know, like that's just the way it is.
Yeah. I mean, and that was kind of like, that was what I was trying to scream for the last 3 years, but like getting drowned out by most of everybody else. There was like 6 of us that were saying something else till the end. If that, I think all the way up until the end, most of us gave up by then. But yeah, I mean, it didn't have to be a war. I agree. And on record for everyone, I agree. The war was declared on you. When Nick Sarwark said that, you know, Ron Paul and Tom Woods and Lou Rockwell are, you know, alt-right bigots in like, what was that, 2017?
Yeah.
That's what started the caucus war. What I wish had happened was a like realignment after Nick left, because that was one of the things that also started the Pragmatist Caucus originally, was like, that's fucking ridiculous. We're not culture warring. We're not caucus warring. We're going to do a thing where it doesn't matter if you're a radical or a Mises or whatever, as long as you care about getting libertarians elected, that's what we're going to do. And that was the caucus's aim, but like the 4 loudest members were like the 4 dumbest fucking asshole dipshits that were, and the only 4 people that actually had a Twitter account. Because like literally 99% of the Pragmatist Caucus does not have a Twitter account, or didn't, whatever. And so like there was like 6 of us that did, and I was the only one that wasn't like a full blue-pilled dumbass. And so they got all, you know, there was a bunch of people, those other 5 stuck up for Nick, even though the rest of the caucus were like, no, we ran to replace Nick. And then the, you know, it continued on as it was, and the Prags kind of fell into the anti-Mises, and there was just a coalescence of everyone that was against you guys, because it was necessary to take on the infiltration as large and as successful as the Mises caucus takeover was.
Sure.
But yeah, I wish after the 2020 convention there was all right, let's see what happens. Like, let's give them a chance and see if they're actually better than Nick. The problem is, I think JBH is objectively more blue-pilled than Nick.
Yeah, and perhaps even more corrupt. I mean, that was like kind of the big issue. There were a few things that kind of like coalesced that really prevented that from being the time where there could have been some type of like healing. And one of them was really the corruption of henchmen like that. Like that, it's really like appalling, dude, when you look at it. Like that they really tried to like that, like, and I understand not liking New Hampshire's tweets. I don't like New Hampshire's tweets. Like I get that, but the idea of like actually defrauding and robbing from like this entire group of members is really crazy. And then to lie about it and totally misrepresent it, it was like a really wild thing that they tried to do. But also a big factor was the fact that was the Joe Jorgensen campaign, and the fact that the messaging in the most important time ever for a Libertarian Party candidate to win. And it was kind of this crazy fluke that no one saw Joe Jorgensen becoming the nominee. You know, it was like this weird thing where Justin Amash kind of like announced he was running, and then there was all this energy behind Jacob Hornberger, and then Amash ended up backing out, and then Jacob Hornberger ended up falling on his face, and then it was kind of like, well, who else is there? And it ended up going to Joe on like the third round of voting or whatever, and she wins. And then her, and I will say Spike, who I love to death, is like I consider a good friend, Spike Cohen, but her and Spike both just had people on their staff who like just did not understand the moment we were living in, and we're having like, I mean, can you imagine that during lockdowns, while the fucking American people are having their liberties violated in a way like never before, and at the same time the government is raping the American people to give trillion dollar handouts to giant corporations, that your message is going to be, you know what, even if you're not racist, that's not good enough. You got to be more than just not racist, Mr. White Guy. You got to be actively anti-racist. And you're like, what? I've been under house arrest for 3 months and there's a riot tearing through my town. And you're telling me the issue is my prejudice? That's the liberty, you know, and like there was a lot of stuff like that, you know, trans genocide posts and things like this that were just really bad. And they really, to everyone with the type of sensibilities who would be in the Mises caucus, that was just like, whoa, what the fuck is this? This is not what's supposed to be representing libertarianism at all. And that kind of also drove a whole, you know, a whole wedge. And there were other things that they had that were good messaging too, but that was just so, like buried all of that. And, you know.
Yeah. I will say that both of those tweets that you mentioned were written not by either Spike or Joe. They were written by the same person who got fired from the campaign.
Is that true? They were both the same person?
Mm-hmm.
Who was it?
I'm not gonna say that one.
Tell me off air.
I'll say it's the same person, and that
I have
they
an
ended
idea.
up they got fired from Spike's campaign. They didn't get fired from Joe's. But they got like demoted, I'll say, on Joe's after that. They kind of got like a little bit more.
Was it a woman?
No.
It's not who I would have guessed.
But the thing that bugs me about that is that most like that was the algorithm fucking with you. Like if you go onto Twitter and like do the advanced search and try and compare how many times Joe or Spike tweeted about lockdowns versus racism, it's staggeringly one versus the
Yeah, but
other.
it only takes one, man.
Right.
It only takes one. Listen, I could tweet all day about the Federal Reserve being bad, and then just tweet once that I think the Nazis had a really good point, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's only one.
Oh yeah.
That's the story now. You know what I mean? Like that's like okay, but that's what you just made the whole story of your campaign. So
yeah,
it's unfortunate, I
there.
suppose, but that's what it is.
Before we wrap up, I want to give you tell people again why they should come to Skankfest, why they should listen to your podcasts, both of them, and why they should buy tickets to one of your shows.
You know, I don't know if you should do any of those things because I don't know your life and I can't tell you what's best for you, but that's because I'm a libertarian. But Skankfest is the best comedy festival in the world. My podcast is me talking libertarian shit like no one else can do it. And come out to my live shows. They're a lot of fun, and people who come out always enjoy it. ComicDaveSmith.com if you want to come check any of that stuff out. It was good to talk to you again, David. It's been too long, man.
Fuck yeah, it was a great conversation. Guys, definitely check out the links below. Check out the handles that are right there. Go buy some tickets for Skankfest, for comedy shows, for everything else, and then come on back here next week. We've got Austin Peterson, broadcaster, former Libertarian Party presidential candidate, or like for nominee, and we're gonna have a great conversation. So come on back, check that out. But until then, keep up the fight.